Good.
If anything happens, just let me know.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Well, the brothers are still under the weather. They are making headway, but Dave sounded kind of rough when I talked to him every day. So he got a hold of me, and this was kind of short notice, but this is something we went over in our class with my teenagers and stuff there here a while back, and it's very, very fitting even for us. And that is the subject of temptation. We all suffer temptation of one form or another. What tempts me may not tempt you. What tempts you, I may not have a problem in the world with. Different examples of that is like alcohol. I have no desire to drink alcohol. There's some people that really, really have a hard time with that. And the list goes on and on. So we're all different, and different things affect us all differently. We all got different weaknesses. We all have different desires. What are some different examples of temptations that some people struggle with? This is, I'm not planning on doing this like a sermon setting. This is more of a class. So just let's fill out some examples. Tobacco. Lottery, gambling. Yep. Anything else? Food. Glutton. Yes. No, gluttony. It's mentioned many, many times.
Well,
And
I'll be personal and say that I'm tempted a lot by most of my family are not Christians, and they plan things on Wednesday nights, Sunday nights, and parties for the kids and things like that, or for other family members. And I give into it more than I should.
we could label that in a lot of things,
Yep.
not just family things, but there's a lot of things that's constantly
I believe it.
trying to pull us away from the assembly of the Lord. You name it. Whether it's you just don't feel like it. Right now, it's too cold out. A little bit of snow on the road. That snow didn't keep you from going to the store or going to the gas station or whatever else you wanted to do. Likewise, it didn't keep you from going to work if you're still working a secular job. So, yeah, those are all temptations that we all struggle with. Some people struggle with stealing, behaving badly. Another thing, temptation. What's it say about the character of the people you keep? Bad company corrupts good character. And that's a bad temptation. If we're hanging out with the wrong people, we're prone to do bad things. It's natural. And it takes a lot of willpower, even and that is one thing that I stress to are the kids in my class. Most time when you're in sporting events, the kids that you're surrounded by don't come from Christian families. That's just the cold hard truth. And they are trying to pull them in different directions. And it takes a lot of willpower and a lot of strength on the side of the kids to be able to stand up to that. Unfortunately, a lot of kids succumb to it and they fall into the trap. And that's something that we have to recognize and try not to put our kids in that situation any more than humanly possible. We're going to be immersed in the world. There's no way to separate ourselves 100% from it. If we do, then we can't be an example. But we have to go about it the right way. And what's some of the things that, this was kind of geared towards my teenage class here a little bit, but you take kids that's hanging around with other kids, what's something that they tend to want to start doing? No, seriously, yes, that is. Gossip.
Swearing. Yeah.
Yep, swearing, cussing is a big one. What if you got a weak one in there and then they start picking on the run?
Right.
Yep. And even though they feel bad about it, or they should, the kids that's been growing up it's real easy to fall into that trap. How about lying? That is a big problem, especially among our kids today. And once you lie to mom and dad once, you can't be trusted. It takes a long time to get that trust back. But these are just different temptations. As Teresa said, I've got in here lust. I mean, that is in our faces constantly. No, commercials on TV. I mean, look at what is being thrown in our face all the time. And they're trying to tell us that is normal. It is not normal, and it's not right. But if we're not careful, we'll accept it as so. You had your hand up, Sue.
A big one with kids, this is where kids become sad and some commit suicide because of it, is the teasing.
Yes.
Teasing gets out of hand.
Yes.
But we have adults that tease also.
Yep.
And you know, really, many times when people tease, there's a grain of truth in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes one person to tease, and pretty soon you got a couple more that want to jump in, and pretty soon it gets out of hand. And what gets out of hand, how do you stop it? It's not just kids, it's adults that do it too. Think, well, it's just a joke.
Right.
It's not a joke if it hurts somebody's feelings.
Yeah.
So that's on both.
Yeah, it's on both sides.
It is. And when you were talking about lying, again, we talk about children and lying. You know, what you lie. Well, how do I know you're not lying this time too?
Right.
Adults may call it a white lie, or it's not a big deal. It is a big deal.
Mhm.
Now, white lie is a sin, whether it's a lie or a white lie.
A lie is a lie. It doesn't matter what it is.
And the same goes with teasing. We're supposed to be building people up, not tearing people down. So when
Right.
you tease somebody, you're tearing them down.
Right.
And that comes to understand also. You know, if what you say can't build somebody up, then just don't say anything at all.
One thing along the teasing line, sometimes the audience, I mean, depends on the relationship you have with that person. I mean, there are some people like, okay, you can rib each other all day long and it doesn't go anywhere. There's other times that it does. And then every once in a while you have the occasion you think, okay, we've got a relationship and that's not going to go anywhere. And then they take it the wrong way. And that's something we have to be aware of. As was mentioned a little bit ago, not being faithful to God, forsaking the assembly. That is very, very easy. Look at all the things that are trying to pull us away. Today, something that's very, very prevalent is sports. I mean, it is a dominating part of society. I mean, there is nothing wrong with sports if it's kept in its proper context. But it, like anything, can get out of hand. Too much, if it has too much control of your life. Okay, this day, and this day, count me out. I'm glued to the couch, and that's it. Or it doesn't matter what's going on at church. We've got this game that we're running our kids to here, there, and everywhere. And sometimes we've got to ask ourselves, are we doing it for the welfare of the kids? Or do we think we are? Or are we doing it because we're for ourselves, that we want that entertainment, or that in some cases trying to relive your younger years through your kids? Heaven knows. I mean, I've seen that a lot, and I'm sure all of you have too.
It doesn't necessarily just have to be sports. It can be
Right. Anything.
You know, be somebody that likes to dance, or somebody that likes to play music, or somebody that likes to make it just overtakes everything.
Right. And then two, those activities. What kind of an atmosphere is it? Sometimes. Back in my younger years, I used to do a lot of motorcycle racing, hare scrambling and enduros. And for the most part at that time, I mean, there was always some rougher ones. There was usually drinking, but we always stayed away from that. But most of it was pretty clean fun. Unfortunately, a lot of it happened on Sundays, and it kept me out of the church. That was prior to me attending faithfully. I remember racing a motorcycle, going through the woods, and I got thinking to myself, I thought, what are you doing? Why are you out here? And the next thing you know, I about hit a tree, and I was like, this is not good because I'm not focused, and that's dangerous. But two, it's like, this is not my priority. And I give it up after that year. But it's one of those things that, like, if I go to one of those events now, the transformation, that it is not even close to a good family atmosphere no more. It is rough, it is foul, it is vulgar. And we used to be able to go out there and do it. We were all friends and we had a good time. We would laugh and joke with each other afterwards about some get off that one of them had. Yeah, I saw what you did or whatever, or man, I just couldn't quite pass you. Now they will purposely wreck you. There is no regard for people of any sort anymore. And if we get caught in the temptation of, I did that as a kid, I want my kids to do that. Look what we're subjecting them to. So, hey, here's something.
I said, yeah, it's changed.
Everything has changed. I mean, even like the high school sporting events.
Yep.
I mean, the constant fighting and the screaming. I mean, what are we subjecting our kids to? I mean, so that's just some other temptations that if we're around it, are we going to fall into the same trap?
I look back, Jason, I'm proud of my parents when I look back, because when I was younger, dad didn't let me do sports or anything, but take me away from church. I probably didn't think it's a great thing that I do now. I mean, and I remember like my mom and dad liked country music. We used to play the country music class on Sunday afternoon. But it didn't matter when the show was, we always left in time to get back to church.
That is great.
I just really appreciate that about the. I appreciate about that with you all here. So I saw Joe a few weeks ago, Kroger's. I said, "You guys going to be open on Christmas night and New Year's night?" And Joe said, "Yeah, we don't close for anything."
Yep.
I said, "Amen."
Yes.
Amen to that.
Absolutely.
Because the thing, if you can get as far as talking to my brother goes to a little church down in West Virginia, and they had a conversation about that. Somebody thought maybe we should change the time or something, and maybe not have a service. And one of the older guys said, the problem with that, once you start something, then you're going to have to take another time off, another time off. Next thing you know, you're only there on Sunday morning. Now, does the Bible say you have to be there Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night? Maybe not, but we better love God that much.
Right.
If you want to be there. Because once you start that, next thing you know, they're only there on Sunday morning and no other time. And then that Scott was talking to my brother, he said, some of those churches now aren't even in existence at all.
Exactly.
So, you know,
Yep.
so I'm proud of you guys.
Well, thank you. And it says a lot about the example that your parents,
Yeah.
I mean, even though okay, yes, we're involved in this, but okay, we're going to cut this off. And that's how it should be. There wasn't that long ago, there was no sporting events like with kids on Wednesday nights. Wednesday night was generally regarded whenever I was younger as, okay, most families go to church. Not no more. Now it starts Sunday morning, 8 a.m. and it doesn't stop.
Now it's more rare to go to church than.
Exactly.
Because a lot of places close at noon even on Wednesdays, they close early and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about it is the work environment can be very hard.
Oh, absolutely. Our work environment. That is one thing too. We have to know our weaknesses, because we have to recognize that if we're in an environment that we can't, we all have to do what we have to do to survive. I mean, to survive and pay our bills. But if we're working in a job where we are struggling, where we're succumbing to temptation, just the pressure, the peer pressure from your coworkers is too much. Just like the last video we saw Don Blackwell, him talking about whenever he realized that he needed to change. And when he did it, he's like, all my buddies here, they're going to think I've went nuts. He said, what happened? They all thought I went nuts. I mean, there is a lot of pressure in the workplace. And talking about that teasing, and there's a lot of that goes, it's not just school, it's the workplace too.
Yeah.
Where I work is very,
Oh.
so, yeah. It's a lot, like they encourage us to go walk in like the Pride Parade, and we aren't forced, but it's suggested. So, I didn't. But-
Yeah, I was gonna say, and in that situation, by not participating, you're the example. Okay, I can be here and not participate.
Yeah.
Yep. Just like going to a work event or something like that where some of your coworkers are doing things that, okay, well, we've got to be the example. 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 13. No temptation has seized you except what is common to man, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can stand up under it. That we ought to take comfort in, that there is nothing out there that we can bear. I'm wondering if I missed something because I'm not seeing part of what I was looking for in there. The first part of that, no temptation has seized you, basically it also breaks down into there is no new temptation to man. We often want to think, and I'm very, very guilty of this, that things are way, which you still would have a hard time convincing me it's not worse than when I was a kid, but there's nothing new now that wasn't already there. I mean, you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, just how wicked those people were. And you have the example of Abraham bartering with God. I mean, it almost sounds like a child. Abraham talking to God. It starts out, I believe it was 50, ends up down to 5. Just once you get, okay, I want to try to get a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And I mean, you look at it, it looks just like what our children are doing. Once they get a little bit, finally, couldn't even find 5 righteous souls in all of Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot, his 2 daughters, and his wife is all that come out. And his wife looked back. Then there's left with 3. So it's very easy for us to say, okay, things is way worse than they've ever been. Sodom and Gomorrah was bad enough that they got basically nuked, is our common phrase today. They got nuked. So that should give us a little bit of comfort there. In Matthew 6 and 13 in the Lord's Prayer, we need to pray that we're not led into temptation. That is something we need to be praying constantly. Please don't lead me into temptation. He'll provide a way out. We have to trust in him. In Matthew 26 and 41, we got to pray not to fall into temptation. Okay, there's a difference between being led into temptation and then you fall into temptation. Leading, you're in a situation to where, okay, now you're in a spot where you could stumble. When you fall, you actually do it. So, again, we need to be praying very, very earnestly for these things. Give me some Bible characters that succumb to temptation. David. He's top of my list. The sin with Bathsheba. How is David described? A man after God's own heart. And yet he succumbed to temptation.
Adam and Eve.
Yep. David, when he fell in that one temptation, what did it do? It snowballed. It didn't just start out with adultery. Then what did it turn into? Lying, murder, and it just kept going and going. Adam and Eve, they fell to temptation. Satan is the master tempter. Who's another one? I'm sorry? Yes. He's on the back, but absolutely. I've got a whole bunch of verses to deal with that one. So we'll pick him up here in a minute. What caused, while we're on that, what caused Solomon to sin? What did he do that he was instructed not to do that led him into those sins? Women. Foreign women with foreign gods. Over and over and over again, the Bible tells us, told the Israelites not to marry foreign women and their foreign gods because it'd be a snare unto you. They'll pull you away. Over and over and over again. We've had this conversation in my Sunday morning class with the kids that at some point they're going to become interested in the opposite sex. When they do, finding a godly person is imperative. Your life becomes so much easier when you have that helpmate. Somebody there to help encourage you rather than trying to tear you down, pull you away. It is, we see example after example after example. If we go into the book of Proverbs, which my kids all know that I love the book of Proverbs, there's verse after verse after verse talking about if you've got a bad spouse, what it can do to you, what kind of life that you'll be living. How about Peter? The temptation to lie denied Christ. He was even warned, told he was going to do it. Usually when you're told you're going to do something, and I'm not blaming him and I'm not casting doubt because that he was put in a very, very tough spot. But I mean, usually, that sticks in the back of your mind. Okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. And almost before he even knew it, he did it. And then he did it again. And then here come along that pesky rooster. And reminded him of what he was told. How about Moses? Can you think of an example where Moses fell into temptation? Exactly. And what did he, when he struck the rock, what statement did he also make? Must we take an equal credit with God?
His brother Aaron was back too.
Yeah.
The one that had the people while Moses was on the mountain.
Yeah.
All this gold stuff in the fire, and just, there's a cow.
Yep, exactly. That was a bold-faced lie, wasn't it? Yeah, it just popped out. Fell to the temptation and the pressure of the people. Talking about the peer pressure. We was talking about that earlier. Aaron is a classic example of that.
I think Judas was.
Yes. Judas certainly fell to temptation. Greed. Money is not the root of all evil. It's the love of money. And that is a very big temptation for a lot of people. That desired fame and fortune. I haven't met a famous or happy rich person yet. Not a single one. Not that I know tons and tons of famous people, but I know some people that's pretty popular in certain circles or very well off. With all that stuff comes a whole new set of problems and temptations. Sometimes we're tempted to try to keep up with the Joneses. Not our Joneses, but just the Joneses in general.
I think money sometimes, when you think, I gotta do this, I do that, I make this much, I make that much, you lose so many opportunities
Mhm.
struggling to get that money.
Yes, you lose your focus.
Just, you lose family time, you know. I don't know, I just, I don't wanna be rich, I wanna be comfortable, but I don't wanna be rich.
Exactly. Just take care of our needs. Yep.
If you ask somebody that's got a lot of money, how much money they need, they're happy to tell you a little bit more.
Yes, it's always a little bit more, just a little bit more. You ever notice that those are the people too that are never, ever satisfied? Never. I know some, and it's just like they were never satisfied. No matter how much anybody give them, how much time or whatever, it was never enough. Like in the case of Moses, that succumbing to that temptation, what did it cost him? He didn't get into the promised land. He got to see it from afar, but he didn't get a step foot in it. He went through all them hardships, wandered around in the desert for 40 years, didn't get across the finish line on the earth. He got to cross it in our heavenly realm, or is going to, but I'm quite sure that he really, really would have liked to win over there.
Jason, this brings up another point too. When you look at all the good things that Moses did, and you think, wow, he's a surefire going to heaven, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
That one mistake he made cost him to enter the promised land, like
Yep.
you said. This is 2025. Many times we don't have the concept of people back then, how serious God is with what he says, and we have the 2025 actually, that's no big deal. To
Yeah.
God, it is a big deal.
Exactly.
And we need to remember, he's the same God he was back in Moses' time as he is today. God has not changed. Our attitudes have changed.
The book of Malachi points that out specifically.
Or how we view God. Like,
Yep.
he's more like the grandpa type now. Then there's a wrath of God and there's the love of God. And sometimes we don't see both of that balance. Sometimes churches, I'd say churches
In general.
look at God now as a grandfather type. He's so loving. All you have to do is be baptized, and you're okay. You're going to go to heaven.
Most of them don't even preach that.
Pardon me?
Most of them don't even preach that.
Just call on the name.
Yes.
Right. But we have to realize a preacher cannot preach everything that's in the Bible.
Nope.
It's our job to read the Bible, because if God says it's wrong, wrong means it's a sin.
Mhm.
And you can't go before God and say, well, I didn't know. We all have a Bible in our house. If we don't read it and we don't learn it and we don't do it, there's nobody to blame but us.
Exactly. We have a tendency, we want to water everything down. That is something I've noticed. Everything is getting watered down these days. This book is not a smorgasbord. I don't know, smorgasbord is not a real popular, it's not a buffet. You can't just pick and choose what you want. You got to take the whole package. And to your point, I mean, the Lord is very, very specific in what he wants. And we have to make every effort to do that. Something that we can take some comfort in is all these examples, most of them here we talked about, like David. He was described as a man after God's own heart. He committed adultery. He had a man killed, was lying, but he still repented of it. And he was still regarded as a man after God's own heart. He was forgiven of it. And that is something we need to remember, that, okay, we are going to stumble. We can't let that keep us down. pick ourselves up, pray, repent of it, pray for forgiveness, and move on. And okay, I'm going to do better next time. I'm not going to do it again. Now, if we do that, we just, as Don pointed out, we just keep doing the same thing day after day after day, your prayer means nothing. Asking, it means nothing. And that's something too. That's a big, when we're constantly told that by the word, it's easy to believe it. It sounds good. It's a whole lot easier than what I'm trying to do. Maybe we'll give that a shot. And that's, we got to just make sure we don't fall into that rut.
Jason, there's also, in the Old Testament, many times you hear of the Israelites having a godly sorrow.
Mhm.
They are truly, in their hearts, very, very sorry. And they
Yes.
ask God for forgiveness, and it's a weeping sorrow. Today in 2025, yeah, we're sorry. Oh, God, please forgive me, I did this, and we just move on.
Yep.
That's not a godly sorrow. It's in a brain where you're so sorrowful, boy, I don't want to do that again, because I grieved God. I
Mhm.
mean, you have to look at it that way, not the other person. You have grieved Almighty God. And we have to take it as a godly sorrow, not just a sorrow.
It should be gut wrenching.
Yes. And if it's
I'm-
not that, are you going to change? You don't have
Exactly.
that kind of sorrow?
Yep. Anything else?
I don't know if this, I guess we kind of come into a temptation when you think you're opposed to God.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have, sad as an example for myself, I've always thought I have to be in control, and then when and I'm still like that, but, fair enough, it's not that. But just like when I prayed for somebody maybe that had a health issue, I always prayed for, don't let it be this, don't let this happen, don't let that. And I went through some things, again, of course, some of you guys know because I have to pray, but I went through some things, some health scares, starting like last August. And I finally, I didn't know if I was going to have heart issues, I didn't know I was going to go through it. And I finally come to realize, when I talked to God, I said, God, you're in control. Whatever I go through, whatever this happens, whatever these tests show, you're going to get me through it one way or the other. And I'm not asking you, let it be this, don't let it be that. I'm just asking you to be there. I know you're going to get me through.
Right.
It was a growing thing for me, and everything went well for me, but, and I don't know whether I can always do that as well.
Right.
But it was a growing thing for me, and I think that, as I said, I don't know if that comes under temptation or not, but it probably is when you think you're in control of God. We all have to realize that God's will is in control.
Yes. And you was talking about praying. We need to pray that God's will be done. Sometimes what I want's not the best thing, and it's not always in God's will. And a cold hard fact is none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. Here recently, there have been a number of people younger than myself that have suddenly passed away. And just in the last few weeks, I mean, and it should be a wake-up call for all of us. I mean, it's easy to take it for granted, and we can't. This might be the last time I stand up here. I don't know, but there's a lot of things too that sometimes are very, very tough to deal with, and that's where prayer comes in and helps us. Like, I could think of something that could cause somebody to be tempted to. The customer that I mentioned a few weeks ago, his 10-year-old daughter, I had the privilege of spending a good bit of time with him today. He had a breakdown on one of his machines that caused him to drive 8.5 hours last night. He left 11:30 last night and showed up at our shop bright and early this morning, and we got him up and going, and I got updates and stuff on his daughter. But you take the distress and the stress of a situation like that, having your 10-year-old daughter in that condition. And right now they're going through the whole insurance rigmarole. January 1 is the specialist that she's been seeing no longer accepts their insurance. So they will not see her. they begged this specialist, like, listen, we will pay for it out of pocket. Just diagnose her, send us somewhere for the treatment. They won't do it. Got referred back to her regular physician, got referred to another specialist, who in turn has referred them to another specialist, and they are now just waiting. And this has been 3 weeks since they got a call at 9:04 in the evening, the day after Christmas, telling them about the extremely serious condition that their 10-year-old daughter has. You would think that if they're making a call at 9:04 p.m., there would be a sense of urgency, because if you're making a call that late, it's serious. It wasn't during normal business hours. Being put in an environment like that, don't you think that would put you in where you could lose your faith? Right now, this man, we've had a lot of conversations, and he is holding strong, and he is very, very thankful for all the prayers that we're giving him. And right now, the daughter, though, is in the dark on this. They're just, because she has anxiety problems with all of her other medical issues anyhow, they don't want her worrying about this. So they're basically just allowing her to, okay, my knee, when it's hurting, it's because I twisted it, until they have some more concrete information. That way it's just, so along those lines, his wife would like the cards from Our Ladies, but nothing's going to be addressed to the daughter right now because she doesn't know. But you look at the stress of a situation like that, that could be a very tempting situation to denounce your faith. Listening to everything that they went through in the last year, and when he called me yesterday morning, told me that he had an issue with his machine with what he did, I got sick to my stomach, because the issue he had usually is extremely expensive. And me knowing everything he was going through, I hurt for him. I was like, oh no. Fortunately, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. And then we had some stuff there that we were able to get him up and going at a reduced cost. So we all got to feel good about that. But it was still just all that. And then he got hit with this.
Everything for him is magnified now.
Exactly.
Any little thing is going to be magnified.
But through all of that, he had just been on the side of a mountain. He's working in the Catskill Mountains, extremely steep ground. And here what happened was he had a shaft stripped out inside of a final drive. He says, I'd just been up on this mountain doing all this, doing that. He said, I just pulled down. He said, I was on flat ground, just as flat as this floor is right here. So then I went to move, and then it went, he said, the Lord was looking out for me. He said, because 2 minutes ago, I was up there. And if it would have happened up there, there was nothing to stop him except the bottom. Because if he hadn't collected himself, he'd have been in neutral, freewheeling off the side of this mountain. But he still had the wherewithal to say, the Lord was looking out for me. And I took great encouragement in that, listening to him say that. That would have been a real good, yep, the Lord, he's kicking me again. But he didn't do that. So we had after we, of course, had him fixed, had a very, very just nice talk. And but stuff like that's it's heart-wrenching, but it's also an inspiration when you can see people that are standing up through it all. What are some other things that cause people to fall into temptation, to fail? Wanting to fit in, talking about peer pressure, like it was earlier, whether it's in the workplace, school, or just with your friends, family. Persecution or fear. Afraid to stand up for what's right because of what you're going to encounter. as we talked about earlier, money or worldly gain. Lust of the eyes is a big thing these days too. That is, I don't know what the divorce rate is anymore, but it's off the charts. Worse than that is the rate of adultery. I remember this was quite a while ago, but I had a job in Columbus as a welder and run around all these factories. And I can say that was probably my least favorite job I've ever had, just the people I was around, that city crowd. And there was one guy in particular. It was sport for him to see how many women he could mess around with. And it was even to the point, it was his wife's friends in their swimming pool while his wife was in the house getting drinks for all of them. I mean, and to listen to him brag about it, and it made you sick. And then he'd start, well, don't you do that? No. You will. And then he'd just keep going and going and going. If you're not grounded, pretty soon you say, you know what he's doing, that's not so bad. Is it in accordance with God's word? So
Without God, anything goes.
exactly. If God's not in the picture, anything goes. But no, I'm still in absolute awe, just disgust.
So I think
I know I hated every time I got sent out on a job with him. He was one of the foremen. I hated it. It was awful. Go ahead.
I think that's, I think about that. I think that's one of those things like when the Bible talks about your eye, things you talk about. Don't think you literally have to cut your eye out. If something like that's a temptation, you better not even take a second look.
Right.
Just look away immediately. If alcohol is your temptation, take a different route home. You don't have to have to lose weight.
Exactly.
You just have to learn to do things to not even get close to temptation. Yes, like you scripture you read, God will provide a way out there. We would be like perfect. Try to not even be in this.
Exactly.
Temptations.
Yep. And that goes back to the people we surround ourselves with. If you've got a problem with alcohol, you better not be hanging out with people that have a drinking problem. And that goes with any vice or weakness that you've got.
My big one was younger, that was speeding. Speeding wrong was a wrong, and I thought, of course, you go just as fast as the speed limit says. I had a buddy told me if I didn't straighten up, people would be on him to straighten out the tree someday.
Mhm.
Hopefully the Lord took care of me until I grew up.
Yep.
I used to be like used to wish I'd be like my dad. Now I finally become my dad, which is totally wrong.
Yeah. Roger.
Jason, there's, I guess over the last few years, my own personal studies, the Bible talks about several different types of faith. There are the great faith, no faith at all, a little faith. And I kind of struggled with that. Well, what type of faith do I have,
Mm-hmm.
You start out with, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. So if I'm not in the word of God like I should, whose fault is that? How does that come back on you? God's already told me what to do. It's my responsibility to do that,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
not anybody else's.
The buck stops here, so to speak. All right. They're waiting to come in. Thank you.
Give me that option, I'm gonna take the 6 months. Yeah, I've got small, that may not mean really anything. It just- A lot of
Page number 43,
Some disappear.
number 43.
We're just, we're almost finished, folks. Hang on.
That's in the book over here.
We're almost finished. Oh, we're gonna stay. She was still sitting.
One more time. Number 43. 43. Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine. Heir of salvation, purchase of God. Born of His Spirit, washed in His blood. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. Perfect submission, perfect delight, visions of rapture that works on my side. Angels descending, bring from above, echoes of mercy, whispers of love. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. Perfect submission, always at rest. I am my Savior, am happy and blessed, watching and waiting, looking above, filled with His goodness, lost in His love. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. Please mark number 674. 674.
Tonight, we've spent a good bit of time talking about temptation, the different types of temptation, and different things that pull people aside. And as we mentioned during our class, that even when we're tempted and we fail and we fall short, Christ is still there for us, and we can still come to redemption and to salvation. We've got multiple characters all throughout the Bible of people like David. He was described as a man after God's own heart, yet he's sinned numerous times, but yet he repented of those and still was in the grace of God. We can also take comfort in the fact that Jesus, he was tempted in every way, but without sin, to prove that it can be done. And that he's our mediator. He's lived this life. He's been here. He knows what we're going through. And when we stand there before God on that final day, he'll be there to mediate for us if we're striving to live that godly life and we've repented of those things that we've done wrong and striving to serve God. If there's anybody that feels that they're lacking, they have a need, now's the time you can come forward as we stand to sing our closing song. Jesus for the cleansing blood,
are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you holy, trusting in His grace this hour? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you washed in the blood, in the soul cleansing blood of the Lamb? Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you walking daily by the Savior's side? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Do you rest each moment in the crucified? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you washed in the blood, in the soul cleansing blood of the Lamb? Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? When the bridegroom cometh, both be white, pure and white in the blood of the Lamb. Will your soul be ready for the mansions bright, and be washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you washed in the blood, in the soul cleansing blood of the Lamb? Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Lay aside the garments that are stained with sin, and be washed in the blood of the Lamb. There's a fountain flowing for the soul unclean, will be washed in the blood of the Lamb. Are you washed in the blood, in the soul cleansing blood of the Lamb?
your garments spotless are they white as snow. Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb?
Good evening, everybody. I want to thank you for being here this evening. Well, Dave is still under the weather. Sounded a bit rough today. He says they're on this side of it, getting better, but he was still coughing and hacking and said he didn't need to be in here spreading disease all over the place. Joe, he's not feeling very well tonight either, so there's a lot of it going around. As I mentioned in class, I got to talk to the father of the 10-year-old girl, Chloe Cinco, the one that's got the tumor in her knee. They're playing the game with the insurance companies, trying to get her into a specialist to get some final updates. His wife would appreciate the cards. Right now, Chloe she's in the dark on it. She's 10 years old and they don't want to just add to the burden and stress that's already on her mind. So don't send anything addressed to her. It'd be to Mrs. Cinco. Dave said she'd like that. That would help uplift her. So there was one put up at one time and we pulled it down because at that time I wasn't, it was so early on, we were worried how it would be received. And two, I'm glad that we did that, because if we'd have sent a boatload of cards to Chloe and she opened them not knowing, it would have been.
If there is one out in the address somewhere.
I'm sorry?
There's an address somewhere.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Is
we,
it in like the chat thing?
it was, but it was taken
Oh, it
down.
was taken, okay.
But either way, we'll get it provided. It was a very, very hectic day. It's been a long week already. It's only Wednesday. But, so that's the update on that. I don't have anything else. Jan,
Yeah, ask for you to continue to pray for my cousin's husband, Daniel Ferguson. He, had his back surgery. I think it's his like fifth surgery. Six. And it was, a real, dangerous surgery. But anyway, he came through the surgery okay, but then he had some problems afterward. And he was delusional and he confused, and he kept telling them that he was in, East Memphis, Tennessee, and his wife up there, and he said, well, they kept telling me that I was in East Memphis, Tennessee, and I'm not in East Memphis, but he had told the doctors his wife was flying from East Memphis to Columbus. And then he went into AFib, and he was having a lot of problems, his breathing and stuff, and his wife kept telling the nurse there was a problem. She said, no, he's just overdosed. But she said, you get a doctor, and when they came in, the doctor said, I can hear him breathing from the hallway. It turns out he has double pneumonia in both lungs, and he's got two types of pneumonia, COVID pneumonia. He didn't even have COVID when he went in for surgery, and bacterial pneumonia. So he's still in ICU yesterday. I haven't talked to him today. And he hadn't eaten for 4 days, and they told him if he didn't eat, they were gonna put a feeding tube in him. And so he finally did eat a little bit of soft food, but I don't know about today. So he's just, it's been really hard on him, but hard on her too. She just doesn't realize it. So.
very, very serious situation.
Her name's Brenda, but Danny's the patient.
Anything else?
My grandpa had his valve replacement today and did really well, so he should hopefully get to come home tomorrow.
Fantastic. Anything else? Nothing further? Well, we encourage you to come back Sunday morning at 9:30 for Sunday school, worship at 10:30. And Eric, would you just miss us in prayer?
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for all the blessings that you gave us. Thank you for this time for us to come together and work through your word. We can be stronger as Christians and not give in to temptation when they may have us. Please look after all those mentioned and all those in the building. Please protect us until our next appointed time. Your son's name we pray.
Mark that thing on. Ready to get mama?
to.